Hello, and welcome to my Action Research virtual poster by me, Amanda Gashardi, in section 9. My problem statement is that I'm interested in adhering to English language learners in my classroom. I'm concerned that using only English text in the classroom can hinder their success in all subjects. I'm curious if there are benefits to using dual language text in the class to support ELL learners. This would be a teacher and student problem. The teacher wants his/her students to succeed and learn in their classroom, and the students want to be able to learn English while also fostering their native language. I would argue that students can experience negative effects not just academically, but socially as well. In my previous placement, I had a student who was ELL, and I feared that he had low self-esteem due to his inability to understand the English language. You could see this prevalent in his interactions with other people in the classroom. For teachers, this can put a great amount of stress on them in order to adhere to all of the ELL students' needs, and teachers want all of their students to feel included in their classroom. Through my observations and through research that I've read, it seems that this has been an issue for many ELL children. With a mass of immigrants coming into our country, I think that this is an important issue that teachers need to learn about. Sometimes the English language learners have not fully developed their original language, and it can be difficult for them to completely transition from their native language to English. I would imagine how isolating it would be if you have peers all around you that can speak English while you have little to no idea how to speak or understand any English. My goals in addressing this problem is to see how my ELL learners become more involved and confident in their learning through the use of dual language texts. I want them to feel included, and I want them to be able to foster their native language while fostering an English language as well. I think that investing some time into researching the ELL culture and language and looking at what resources are available for the student. So my problem statement thus far is I have noticed in my own experiences that students who are ELL often hesitate to participate in language activities. I want to be able to foster their native language while helping them to develop the English language. I would like to incorporate dual language text to see how it changes ELL participation in classroom activities. My research questions that I narrowed down were: how do dual language texts change ELL student participation during language arts activities specifically? And how can I use dual language text to increase ELL student confidence in speaking English? Some of the definitions of central and relevant terms are the English language learner. For those of you that don't know what that means, it's short form is ELL, and they are students who are unable to communicate fluently or learn effectively in English, who often come from non-English speaking homes and backgrounds, and who typically require specialized or modified instruction in both the English language and in their academic courses. The dual language texts, it's a tool for language learners and or bilingual readers. They offer text in 2 different languages. Having the English text handy means that you can easily fill in any vocabulary gaps with just a glance. So typically this is seen, the book, they look just like any regular children's book, but they'll have the English sentence on top and typically your specific language that you need for your classroom underneath. So these can be found in your local library and in the Brock IRC. I definitely would advise you to check them out because they're really cool. In classroom participation, the action of taking part in classroom activities, insightful comments, and interesting connections being made by students that can foster a high level of energy and enthusiasm in the classroom learning environment. Cultural inclusion addresses and supports the needs of people from diverse cultures and values their unique contribution. It involves ongoing awareness raising where negotiations and compromise may be necessary. And these next couple slides are some of the summaries that I made from the research that I looked at. Overall, in those 4 slides, there is a big, clear correlation between low self-esteem and lack of participation for ELL learners. That is to say, students that are being asked to only practice their secondary language reports feeling of low self-worth, invalidation, and isolation. Dual language texts and programming serve to create empathetic responses in students whose primary language is English, while celebrating the background and cultures of students who do not. Despite being primarily a literary strategy, I would argue that this strategy is also good for fostering diversity, tolerance, and inclusion within the classroom. The research focused on how to incorporate dual language text into the classroom through literature circles and how cultural inclusion is built through the acceptance of difference. One major key that was missing from my data, or that was not focused on, was how dual language text increased participation of ELL. There is room for growth in the literature that I selected, but it was very helpful to provide me with the information that I needed in order to organize and narrow down my research process. So my research action plan. My plan is to use student journals. Student journals are the journals in which students will reflect on their experience during language activities that use dual language texts. They will be instructed to reflect on how they felt completing the activity and their contributions to the discussion and group. I would select journals from a small group of students in my classroom, my English language learners and English speaking. ELL learners will have the option to record their journals using Voice Record app on the iPad. This is a speech-to-text technology. Since they will have difficulty most likely writing in English, it's just another option that I was thinking about to provide for them. I chose this data source because it is an easy way to manage information, as it allows you to focus on a small group of students from a larger set of data. My next data source is focus groups. So focus groups are carefully planned interviews with groups of students. My role as a teacher/researcher is to guide the discussion group in focused and prepared questions while remaining as neutral as possible. Students must feel comfortable enough to opt out at any time and decline questions that make them feel uncomfortable. How it works is the mediator asks the groups a question. Each student will take a turn to answer the question in a circle formation. I would have to strategically use this data collection method and ensure that all the students in my class feel comfortable enough to participate. One way that I might help students that are ELL is to ask them to draw a picture of their answer rather than respond to it orally. This just helps and gives them a sort of a backdrop to help them if they do choose to share, if they do not. This way I'm still gathering data on how they are feeling. I could even prepare my questions ahead of time for my ELL students so they have the opportunity to think about their responses and what they would say during the circle. I chose this strategy because it allows me to understand students' perspective outside of the student journals. I get to ask questions that would initiate discussion amongst students and to learn about each student's perspective on certain topics. Questionnaires. Questionnaires are used to describe attitudes, perceptions, and beliefs of a small population of individuals. Respondents independently fill out a form and return it to the researcher. For my questionnaire, I'll be using the method of stickers rather than written responses. So the way that I visualize this is if my questionnaire is asking them about how they feel, so each sticker will represent, maybe I'll represent them in smiley faces. Maybe there'll be a sad face if they feel uncomfortable during this. There'll be a really, really happy face if they're really, really comfortable doing this. That's just an example of the way that I was thinking about it. Students will be given stickers that represent certain moods and how they would respond to the question. This allows all students to feel like they can answer the question, modified for the ELL learners specifically. And I chose this form of data collection because it's very useful for collecting data from a large group of people. So if I have 30 kids in my class, it's definitely a quick and easy way of gathering data. And as well as I can recover direct answers from precise questions. So how am I going to keep my data forms, or how am I going to foster triangulation, validity, and reliability? I plan to use anecdotal notes, my own teacher journal, and tracking forms. I chose each of these specifically to allow for triangulation and to ensure valid and reliable data. Each one of my main sets of data collection will need to be modified to ensure that each student is able to access it, as I will be working with students whose first language will not be English. It will be imperative that I collect my data using a variety of ways to ensure that I'm getting a vast information that allows for multiple perspectives to be heard. I'll be using anecdotal notes to record observations and remarks made by students throughout the focus group activities. It is crucial that I record notes during this period of data collection, as I can draw connections from student conversations and highlight important themes. My own teacher journal will be a way for me to reflect on observations that I made and to draw conclusions from the anecdotal notes that I recorded.